Good evening, race fans, and welcome to the Good Atlanta 250 for the Belly Up Sports Cup Series on the Elite Racing Network. My name is David Westergreen. I am joined tonight by David Huckleberry, our producer, and Zach Evans, my co-broadcaster. And Zach, as we start this second round of the Belly Up Sports playoffs, we got 9 drivers looking to cement their place in the final race here at the end of the season. What do you expect happens tonight from the bumpy surface of Old Atlanta?
Well, you heard a lot of the guys last week that we spoke to on the podium, how much they love this track, how much it's a driver's racetrack. We're going to find out over these 250 miles who has the best game plan, who has the best management, and who has the most speed over the long run. Somebody is going to win their way into the championship round out of tonight, and there's no doubt they're going to have to earn it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, I look at this playoff grid. We've got kind of our dominant 4 there at the top of this playoff grid locked in, but some names outside of that top 4, and you'll be able to see their numbers in yellow and red, respectively, on our pylon once we get started tonight. Some of those names on the outside: Jonathan Cutlip, Matthew Weeks, guys who I think could definitely contend for the win today. Ryan Gable there as well. Justin Wadsworth, just about all of those drivers in red could take away an opportunity from one of our dominant 4 to go for a championship this year. And what better place to do it here than old bumpy Atlanta, where the tire saving is the most important factor, and the long green flag runs are going to be crucial.
Oh, 100%. You know we're gonna get those long green flag runs here. You know whoever wins is gonna have to put themselves in a position over that long run. And as you mentioned, some of these guys have had some success over the years here. This is the one, this is the version of Atlanta that's been on iRacing for probably close to a dozen years at this point, if not longer. So lots of these guys are very familiar with this track.
Yeah, a lot of these guys have run a lot of races here at Atlanta. This is one of the first tracks you get into when you get this sim and start learning how to turn laps and learning how to save tires and all those things. So there's a lot of experience in this field, but qualifying has just wrapped up, and we have Pro Edge teammates sitting on the front row. Matthew Weeks going from last on the playoff grid. He will start from the pole here in race 1 of round 2. Tate Lytle will be to his outside. Chris Wright will start third with Ryan Gable starting in 4th. Johnny Thomas qualified 5th, just missed out on entering this round of 9, but he'll go for the win there from 5th. Jonathan Cutlip will start 6th. Nick Indelicato start 7th, and Ethan Burrell will start 8th. Scott Crump will start 9th, and Ethan Stanley will round out the top 10. Jesse Racimus and Trey Holmes will round out row 6.
Jordan Owens rolls off 13th. Zach Rogers joining him on the 7th row. Jeff Green starting 15th. Gavin Hibbs will be 16th. Justin Wadsworth, another one of those playoff drivers, starting 17th. He'll be alongside a Leighton Norgard on row number 9. Tyler Fody, he's a former winner here at Atlanta in the Cup Series. He'll be starting 19th. Chad Frankenfield, 2-time winner here at Atlanta. He's starting 20th. Josh Adams, 21st. Seth Rawls, 22nd. Ray Bracey, 23rd. Casey Hatch, 24th.
And 25th will be Justin Fortner. Dusty Dewar will be 26th. Justin Vandermarl, our winner at the new Atlanta, starts 27th. Michael Goodman will start in 28th. Gerald Campbell will start 29th. And Carlos Acosta will roll from 30th. Kyle Hanshaw starts 31st. Josh Clark will start 32nd in what is going to be his final Elite Cup Series season for the driver 28. Corey Abbott starts 33rd. Brent Jones will start 34th. Michael Hosack starts 35th. David Tooker starts 36th. And then to round out the field, it is Mark Rabilas and Andrew Rucker making out our 38-car field tonight. So with that, as we begin our 1 pace lap, Zach, who's maybe your favorite, your pick for this race tonight? Oh,
yeah, Johnny Thomas. Heck,
I love it. He's definitely a tire saving kind of driver, and Johnny's run pretty good here. I was trying to think back to Legacy, Texas, was the other track we also ran. Guy who finished in the top 5 there was Jordan Owens. I kind of think Jordan Owens will have something for these guys by the end of the night. As we roll around, the pace car will dive in. We will go green for 163 laps. Dave's picking Ryan Gable also, by the way.
Oh, wow.
He's picking the Hux machine. I think that's pretty fair.
Wow. Way to go out on a limb there, Dave.
Pace car onto pit road. Matthew Weeks and Tate Lytle into the restart zone. The green flag is out. We are racing here at Atlanta. The Pro Edge teammates go off into turn 1, and it is Tate Lytle with a bit of a jump on his teammate Matthew Weeks.
And we'll see early on here who wants to jump out front and who's content to just hang out in this top 5, top 10 or so and manage those tires. Right now, still 2x2 all the way through the field.
One guy we know is not going to be saving his stuff all that much. That's going to be Ryan Gable. He drives up behind Tate Lytle, pushes the 56 car through to the race lead. Tate Lytle will lead lap number 1. Ryan Gable will follow him by the pole sitter Matthew Weeks. And Weeks trapped on the bottom right here, but that might not be a bad thing for driver 11.
And early on, you see a lot of those blue windshield banners up front denoting those playoff competitors. Tate Lytle, Ryan Gable, a couple of them side by side down the backstretch. It looks like Ryan Gable's got to get out front here.
Ryan Gable, Chris Wright jumped to the top of the racetrack early. Not a sentence that I'm surprised to say in the least. Ryan Gable to the lead, Chris Wright to second. The Pro Edge Toyotas drop to the bottom and begin saving and conserving those tires. Gable leads lap number 2. Wright challenging for the lead in the Chairgate number 9, and he's got it all the way to the top of the racetrack. He'll take the lead from Ryan Gable down the back straightaway.
Right now, you see Jonathan Cutlip, Tate Lytle side by side for that 3rd position. Behind them, Matthew Weeks and Ethan Burrell. 3 wide further back, that's Jordan Owens. He'll back out of it, but he was briefly 3 wide with, I believe that was Johnny Thomas and Jordan Owens.
Yep, Johnny Thomas, Jordan Owens. I think Scott Crump went to the outside of Johnny while he was side by side with Indelicato, and that kind of bobbled everybody up, but they continue forward. Chris Wright, the race leader. Gable, Cutlip, Ethan Burrell has climbed into that 4th spot just in front of his Pro Edge teammates who started on the front row and have fallen back early. I can't help but think those guys are going to start climbing forward as this run grows old.
And that's the chess game, especially with a 250-mile race. That's a long time around this racetrack, 163 laps. Being up front has some value now, especially if you're trying to rack up those, bonus points or whatever the case may be. But you also have to think about the long game. You have to think about managing those tires on this old abrasive surface, especially with that sun beating down. There are no lights like we had it, earlier this season with the new Atlanta. This is in the heat of the day, and that does matter here on the iRacing Sim.
Sure does. 113-degree track temp right now. And they're trying to wreck in the mid-pack there. Ultimately, they do not and keep it straight on the back straightaway. Right around Ray Bracey, looked like Leighton Norgard and Gerald Campbell might have bounced off of one another just in front of the driver of the green 7 car. Very easy to pick out back there. But up front, they're single file. Chris Wright's driven away from the field just a little bit. And, I kind of think we haven't seen this kind of pace from Chris Wright. It concerns me that he might be abrasing the tires a little bit extra, but he is running the bottom of the racetrack, and that's not really something we've seen from Chris Wright. He's very good at this track. I've seen Chris Wright race for a championship at this track. Very much a Chris Wright type of racetrack where if the car is set up to the liking of this driver number 9, he might be able to put together a really good race. It's just been a really long time since we've entered this next-gen car that I've seen, a big run from Chris Wright quite like this.
Looking back at the last time the Elite Belly Up Sports Cup Series was at Legacy Atlanta in the 2023 A season, Chris Wright finished 5th in that race.
He's pretty good around this place. Battle for second, Ethan Burrell challenging Ryan Gable. For now, that will be stemmed off. Ryan Gable's teammate Scott Crump has climbed into the 4th spot. He is utilizing that top lane, trying to get that thing moving forward, and Crump missed out on this round, but he does take over 4th place from Jonathan Cutlip. Scott Crump going for pride at this point. He missed it by 1 point last week at Talladega. Nick Indelicato was in, Crump was out, and remember, Crump had fallen off the back of the pack with a couple of laps to go, and then nobody wrecked. And we went to the line green, and ultimately Scott Crump misses out on the playoffs by 1 singular point in that first round. We look back even further. From Crump, Tate Lytle and Matthew Weeks still continuing to back up. Ethan Stanley's gotten around the 11 car. Now Jordan Owens working to the top side of Matthew Weeks. And Weeks is very clearly under a game plan. He wants to save the tires on this 11 car, be there at the end of a long green flag run. It's Trey Holmes sideways. He's going to get back into the middle of the field. The caution's going to be out. Big wreck between Holmes, Goodman, Hosack. A pretty substantial wreck can pile up here on the front straightaway where Trey Holmes got out of shape and ended up coming back across the racetrack in front of traffic.
We'll take a look here at the Mark Robillas replay machine. There you see the 88 car of Trey Holmes stepping out. Then it corrects to the right. He locks up the brakes, but there's just no way for the field to get checked up in time. You see a Leighton Norgard take a horrific hit.
I said Michael Hosack was involved. I believe that was incorrect. I believe that the car I saw hit Trey Holmes was Casey Hatch. Let's see if we can get another look at that big impacts for a Leighton Norgard, who looked like he went up in the air in the 12 car. And this car is already on pit road with a meatball flag. Hatch with a meatball flag. And there's Trey Holmes coming back across the field. Oh! I think Josh Clark might have gotten a piece of this as well.
Yeah, I'm seeing both Norgard and Hatch with meatballs. No surprise on either of those, seeing the impacts they took in this incident. You see Michael Goodman involved, Josh Clark getting a piece, Justin Vandermarl. The funny thing is, I feel like Josh Clark might have net-coded through Norgard, but then he still, of course, finds the 80 car of Justin Vandermarl.
This is a big hit, and Norgard hits the wall and then flips over down the front straightaway here. And there's just, you saw it on the onboard. There's nothing this 12 car could do. I mean, he was right behind as the 88 slid up the track, and a tough break for a Leighton Norgard. He had been moving forward a little bit to start this race, but ultimately I think he'll finish pretty far back. Stanley, Johnny Thomas come down pit road and get tires here. Some of those guys up front stayed out, including race leader Chris Wright. And we've got a bit of a divided field. We'll re-rack it for you guys when we come back from break. We'll run our first video ads here under this first caution, and we'll get back to you.
Since 2010, race fans have had one burning question. When will the Xfinity Series return to Worldwide Technology Raceway? You asked, NASCAR delivered. On Saturday, September 6, 2025, the magic is back. The track that launched the legendary careers of Harvick, Busch, Keselowski, Edwards, and Earnhardt Jr. is now ready to write that next chapter. We're going to introduce you to a new crop of future champions and Hall of Famers. And in the process, we'll create more of the greatest moments in racing history. NASCAR Weekend 2025, the NASCAR Cup Series Championship Playoffs, the Confluence Music Festival, and now 250 miles of the NASCAR Xfinity Series. 2 incredible races, 1 challenging track, a 3-day party of epic proportions. Go to www.raceway.com and lock in your weekend racing and camping packages for as little as $20 down.
Welcome back to Atlanta, working our first caution flag of the race. Lap 14 of 163 for the Elite Cup Series drivers. Looks like we had about 25 or so cars stay on the racetrack that time. First on tires is going to be Ethan Stanley in the 91 car. Pace car back off. Chris Wright and Ryan Gable on the front row here, with Ethan Burrell and Scott Crump making up row 2, Jonathan Cutlip and Tate Lytle in row 3. The green flag is back out, and Chris Wright is on the loud pedal. He will lead us down into turn 1.
A little bit of a stack up from Jordan Owens on back on that inside line. That's going to allow these first 6 or so cars to break free. We're 3 wide up front almost.
Ryan Gable works the middle of the racetrack on this restart. He'll now dice to the bottom, just in front of Ethan Burrell. Burrell slams the door on Scott Crump up top, and Crump changes lanes to the bottom of the racetrack. This restart just shows why I love this old version of Atlanta Motor Speedway, as Ryan Gable clears by Chris Wright for the race lead. Wright jumps back to the bottom on Gable. 3 wide for the lead once again at Atlanta. Ethan Burrell jumps to the bottom, trying to grab the lead from those 2 Chevrolets.
This is why you love Atlanta. This is why the drivers love Atlanta. Find a lane your car works in and go to town. It might be high, it might be low, it might be in the middle. Right now we're seeing all 3 in work up front.
Yep, and all 3 of them seem to be competitive. Just depends on the run you get with this next-gen car. Chris Wright now forges ahead above Ethan Burrell and Ryan Gable. Those 2 remain side by side behind Wright. Scott Crump, Jonathan Cutlip, Matthew Weeks, and Tate Lytle look on. They're 2 and 3 wide further back behind this group. You can see the snarling pack. They ran basically just like this the whole entirety of that first run, as Burrell again trying to grab the lead from Chris Wright. It seems like with this next-gen car, it's going to take 15 or 20 laps for this thing to really start to wear. And you know, once that happens, I think cars will spread out a little bit. But until it does, until that wear kicks in, these guys are going to be on top of each other.
Oh, 100%. And you have to be really on the wheel here, making sure you're getting everything you can out of these cars, but also being mindful of all the cars around you, what lanes they are running, and those lanes might change from one lap to the next. An easy way to get caught out at a track like this is you try to set up a pass on a guy. You've watched him go low, go low, go low 3 or 4 laps in a row. But if he realizes you're catching him or he's losing ground on the guy in front of you, then that very next corner he might change lanes, trying to alter that course of action, as now you see these top 4 side by side again.
Chris Wright just got exactly what Zach mentioned put on him. He was running that top lane. Ryan Gable got to his right rear quarter panel. Now Chris Wright's got to run the bottom of the racetrack and fight for the lead from that bottom lane. Seems like the outside line is the line you use to pass. Seems like the bottom is the line you use to try and ride a little bit. So these guys running the bottom, they're not trying to pass necessarily. They're either trapped down there or they're hoping to save tire down there. Guys running the top, that's where you're looking to pass. That's where you're trying to generate the runs down these long straightaways. And Ryan Gable making that work right now. He pushes ahead of Chris Wright, Scott Crump, and Ethan Burrell, tucked in line in this draft-heavy next-gen car. Never got to run it. Old Atlanta, they repaved it just in time for the arrival of this machine. Crump thought about 3 wide on Ryan Gable. He just thinks better of it, stays in line behind his teammate, and pushes Gable to the lead.
You talk about, the history of this legacy version of Atlanta, and back in, the early 2000s, or even when it was first reconfigured into this fashion in, I believe it was 1997, this was one of the fastest tracks on the NASCAR circuit, even with the older pavement. Because of that speed you mentioned that you're able to generate running the high side, it was honestly very demanding on engines. Because from right about here, where Ryan Gable is now, until maybe the entrance of turn 1, you're pretty close to flat out, or at least you were at that time period.
Mm-hmm. And as Ryan Gable bobbles, giving Scott Crump that run to the bottom of the track, the engines are a lot more, we'll call them reliable now.
For sure.
But,
especially
for
on
our younger. Right, and on iRacing, they're always reliable. They'll never burn out unless you draft too close for too long, like we mentioned last week at Talladega. But, the motors back then would grenade, and it would often be the cause of a poor finish for a driver in points. Now, that's not a concern tonight, and oftentimes we kind of refer to guys disconnecting or having some kind of internet issues or woes like that as kind of the mechanical failures of these iRacing series.
We're good now, but Jeff Green had a moment here on the front stretch. He's got to fall way, way back into field. He was almost at complete stop trying to gather that car as it slid down the front stretch.
That while the race lead changed hands, Scott Crump moves to the lead over Ryan Gable. That battle's still raging on as we take a look at what happened to Jeff Green. It looks like he just got a little bit loose underneath that 25. Oh, no. Rawls got loose. Yeah, Rawls got loose, tracked down into Jeff Green, gave him the door, but Green able to save it and keep that 2-car running for another few laps. We've got some pretty sizable movers here early in this race that I do want to point out. Tyler Fode has climbed to 8th from starting 19th in the 40 car. Just in front of him, Gavin Hibbs is up to 6th from 16th starting position in the 95. And then just behind these guys, Josh Adams has risen up to 10th from 21st in the 22. So several good movers. And as Josh Adams goes to the top, the car dropping to the bottom is one other guy moving forward. That's Gerald Campbell. He is, I believe, on fresh tires. He started 29th. He's up to 13th. Ethan Stanley is just in front of Gerald Campbell. That is the first car on 4 fresh tires after our first caution of the day. And currently Stanley's 3 wide with another playoff driver in Delicato. It could be Harry. It will be. It will be.
Oh.
They saved it. Delicato hangs on. Stanley hangs on. Yellow flag out. Delicato may not have saved it. Did nobody hit him? Yeah, he has to lock it down there, and it seems like everybody's able to avoid the 10. Ooh,
Dewar. That might have been close.
Dewar was very close to impacting one of our playoff drivers, and they made contact, the 10 and the 91 on corner exit there, and that was almost disastrous. There is a little bit of damage on the right front of the Ethan Stanley machine, and Dewar warming up a little bit, but I think he even got into Kyle Hanshaw there trying to get around the 10. Ultimately, Delicato able to avoid major damage, and he'll have a long road ahead to march back forward, but he is at the very least still going to be running, as is Ethan Stanley. Neither of those guys can really afford a poor run. Stanley can a little bit better than Delicato, as he's already one of our top 4 in this round, but not the way you want to start. And it looks like most of the field is coming down pit road. Ethan Stanley's not. Stanley will stay out. Nick Mass. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it looks like Gerald Campbell has also stayed out here.
So too has Chris
Wright. Chris Wright hasn't been down pit road at all, has he?
He has not. He stayed out. Johnny Thomas is staying out.
Chris just jokingly said he was going to run the entire race on us.
He can certainly try.
This may be a bit of a disaster for Chris Wright. I think this would have been the time to come get your fresh rubber, gain the advantage over the 5 or 6 guys that pitted last time. Those guys, I think, are going to fall to the back. We had about 13 to 15 laps there on fresh tires, so it seemed like a good time to get cycled back in with the leaders, and they did not take it. I'm trying to look at how many sets of tires we have. We have 6 sets of tires, so these guys up front have used an extra set. Chris Wright's trying to gain a set on the field. He likes to do that, but I don't know that was going to be the right call in this case.
Yeah, I kind of understand either side of you pit the last time to get out front here, or you pit this time to kind of stay on schedule with your tire allotment. This is a pretty tough ask, I think, for Chris Wright, and he might prove us wrong here, but everybody on the field's going to have fresher tires than him, and if the field gets strung out, that could be a huge punishment. Not to mention, I mean, you're not going to be able to go as long on fuel.
Right. I was going to say, Chris Wright, if this does go green, this puts him in a very bad spot, because he'll have to basically short pit every single cycle the rest of the way. And, we haven't had that yet. Obviously, 2 caution flags, both right at that 14-15 lap mark in the run. Haven't gotten that long green flag run we're kind of expecting out of Atlanta just yet. But that doesn't mean that one isn't coming. And that's kind of my thought.
I think that's both of ours from our experience, our biggest concern. And, I mean, I could tell you even last night in the Rev Limit series on the oval at Charlotte, I was betting on that one more caution, and then I'd come get my tires, and then we went the last 50 some laps caution free, and so I ran the whole race on one set of tires. That was only 65 laps and not 163, but trust me, I was wishing I had taken on 4 tires in one of those early cautions by the end of the race.
I think Chris Wright will be as well as we move to 1 to green. Of course, he could jump out front, use that clean air to his advantage, and, stem the flow of losing spots until the next caution flag, but only time will tell. And if there is a time to make a gamble like this, it is early in this race. I think Chris Wright does have good pace tonight. He was up front, very clearly one of the top cars tonight. This is a great time to figure out what you've got. 10 laps, I guess Chris has about 25-ish laps on the tires. In this next-gen car, what does that look like at Atlanta? Do you think like a rock, like you would in any other car on the service at this track, or are you able to hold your own with that older set of tires? And we'll know shortly. Chris Wright will know, and he'll have that filed away for later in the race. But I do imagine Scott Crump's going to be very excited there in 6th with 4 fresh tires. So before we start to re-rack, the 5 drivers in front have stayed out on the track. Chris Wright has not been down pit road. Campbell, Stanley, Thomas, Frankenfield have 15 lap old tires, and everybody else is on fresh. Green flag is back out. Chris Wright with a big jump. Johnny Thomas is going to pull to the bottom of the track to try and get around driver number 9, but Scott Crump is going to be the man on a mission in the middle with 4 fresh tires. He's going to bypass Chris Wright very quickly, and it's Johnny Thomas to the lead, but Wright is going to be Crump's going to be right on his door.
Here he comes down to the bottom. Scott Crump to the inside of Johnny Thomas, but it washes up the hill on him. He has to back out of it. Johnny Thomas is going to lead him back to the line, but here comes Ethan Stanley. They're going to be 3 wide.
They're 3 wide for the lead again. Stanley jumps to the top in the 91. He pins Johnny Thomas to the middle. Up front, Crump gets to the lead. He's going to try to slide up in front of his Lake Norman teammate. Chad Frankenfield's jumped to the top of the racetrack. Johnny Thomas still 3 wide in the middle. Gerald Campbell on the bottom. Campbell slots in behind Thomas. And they are racing ferociously at the front of the pack. This almost looks like new Atlanta. Just Campbell through the middle. Fresh tires on the 0-1. The Hucks machine drives to the bottom. He takes over 3rd. Lake Norman 1-2-3.
Ryan was not going to be denied there. He stuck it in the middle with those fresh tires and pulled up to 3rd. Now he's got to go after these top 2.
Keeping notes as Ray was contact while avoiding Nick and Delicado's stopped race car. Probably could have slowed down a little bit earlier, and ultimately Dewar will not be able to make contact again in this race, where he may get disqualified. Up front, it is pole sitter Matthew Weeks now to the bottom of Chad Frankenfield in the 15 car. Tyler Fode's just behind, and Weeks is going to jump to the top in front of Frankenfield and cut off the clean air to that 15, while Fody remains trapped in behind driver 15. Gerald's on the bottom loose.
Oh, yeah, he's falling way back. It looks like everybody's got to be able to get around him for now, but losing a ton of ground. Oh, Jesse Racima's getting a piece of the wall there as he navigated the front stretch.
Jesse bounced off the fence. Gerald continues to fall back now into the clutches of Andrew Rucker. Up front, 3 wide for about 6th spot. Wadsworth clears by Ethan Stanley and Gavin Hibbs. Move Justin Wadsworth into the top 6 as he jumps after Chad Frankenfield as well. Here comes another one of those Lake Norman Chevrolets who are 1, 2, 3 at the front. Stanley's fallen back. Now it's Tyler Fody up into 3rd.
I mean, these guys are all over the place right now. Oh, a little bit of contact there between Fody and Ryan Gable. Gable hangs on to it. Can Fody generate the run on corner exit here? No, Ryan Gable will hang on for now, but a moment for sure in turns 1 and 2 for those drivers.
Those guys are teammates. They can't be running into each other. They got to work together to try and get up here and get around these Pro Edge Toyotas. And you can see it is just like that this Atlanta race we ran a few months back. You got the Lake Norman guys all lined up on the top. You got the Pro Edge drivers lined up on the bottom. It's not a drafting track though, right? But these guys are trying to utilize the lanes, trying to pinch and shove and keep it all together as Chad Frankenfield loose. Cutlet makes contact with Chad. Chad's down on the apron. He's going to save it, but the old tires on that 15 seem to have worn out the handling, and Chad Frankenfield is going to go to the back.
Yep, he'll drop all the way to the back. We'll see if we can get a look here on the Rebelus replay machine. And I think it just starts with him washing up the hill here in turns 2. He might... I don't know if there was contact there with Adams or not, but either way, the car gets out of shape. And right about the time he thinks he's got it gathered up, then, of course, Cutlip gets out of shape trying to squeeze by. There's the contact there, and that kind of finishes the matter for Chad Frankenfield. He's got to go all the way to the back here trying to gather that car up.
Yeah, that a heart-stopping moment for Chad Frankenfield, but not a race-ending one, and that's I think what's kind of important here is that now Chad can kind of regroup. He'll get back to get back on cycle with these guys, potentially the next caution, at the very least on the next pit stop, and regroup from there. I do want to note Chris Wright has fallen to 33rd. That strategy has not worked so far, but the race is young. Chris now knows you need fresh tires. If the rest of the field is going to come get him, you probably got to go get him.
The one thing that he has in the pocket right now, if we were to get a caution here in the next 5 laps or so, which would be on schedule with how the race has gone to this point, he does have the extra set of tires in the pits, and it's going to be a much tougher choice for everybody in front of him. If they want to burn 2 sets of tires this early in the race, it's not going to be a tough choice for him.
Right. I will note Ethan Stanley and Johnny Thomas are kind of mid-pack right now, about 15th to 17th, and they're still falling back on those older tires. They had moved to the top 10, like 12th to 15th, right where they are now. It's a net, neutral outcome for them, but earlier in this race with the fresh tires, they were moving forward, and they were moving forward quite well. So Chris Wright, if we do get that caution kind of on schedule like you were talking about, he could be in a really good spot to take that track position back.
Here we look.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we're looking now at Justin Wadsworth, Matthew Weeks battling for the 5th position here.
Just in front of these guys, the note I want to make, Ethan Burrell is 75 or so laps shy of notching the, I want to say it's most laps led in a season mark for the Elite Cup Series, and he's been pretty aggressive tonight. I don't know that he's led a lap yet. He may have gotten one early on in the fighting with Chris Wright, but that is going to be one of the goals, one of the things to watch out for. I also believe that if Ethan Stanley picks up a race win here in our Final Four, he will take over the most races in a Season 1 record in this Cup Series. That's par for the course. He's won a lot of races this year. Back up front, Scott Crump is the race leader. He has opened up a 0.4 of a second gap back to Ryan Gable. Gable's in front of Tyler Fode. Then it is Burrell. The battle between Cutlip and Wadsworth. Cutlip is really making some ground on the bottom of the racetrack. 5-car starting to come to life here as this run grows old. Wadsworth sitting in 6th. Josh Adams is 7th. Matthew Weeks, the pole sitters, back in 8th. Gavin Hibbs is 9th. Ray Bracey is up to 10th. This front pack feels like it's kind of bottled up. There's just not a whole lot of places for anyone to go. Kind of singled out.
Yeah, I wonder as the tires wear off if it gets a little bit harder to make those passes on the bottom side, if the car just gets too snug, right, with the lack of grip in those tires, and just might make it a little bit more difficult to make those passes happen.
Yeah, the way this next gen car usually trends is I don't know if that was contact or maybe a little bit of loose condition for that 22. This car trends tight. You kind of burn down the right front tire, and that usually wears it, especially if you're running the outside lane, like Josh Adams, like Gavin Hibbs, like Ray Bracey. It will create a sensation where when you turn that wheel to try and make the corner, the car just does not want to turn, and you have to slow the car down more and more as that run goes along to turn, and the fastest drivers will not run into that scenario because that way their car slows down each corner. It stays the same. They're able to kind of replicate that over the course of a long green flag run. That car does not turn super tight. You'll hear drivers refer to it as a dump truck. And they'll be able to turn the wheel.
Let's see, Matthew Weeks is just pointing out to, I believe that was Josh Adams, says, yeah, you can see it. There's a little bit of damage on the right front of that 22 car, and that's part of the reason he's going backwards at the moment.
That might have gotten the wall at some point here. Bracey goes by, Lytle goes by, Adams now dropping out of the top 10. And I'm imagining the damage on the 22 is not making that car handle all that well.
And a track where you're carrying this much speed, it would, even in the sim, it's amazing how much of an impact even the slightest amount of damage can have, either arrow-wise or even if you get in the wall just right and damage, or even just slightly, knock out the toe of that right front wheel. It can have a huge impact both on the short-term handling and even the tire wear. As there you see Gavin Hibbs getting a piece of the wall.
Oh, Bracey sideways on corner exit. He'll save it, drop in line behind Tate Lytle. A moment there for a couple of our drivers running inside the top 10. Hibbs loves that outside wall, though. He'll always be dedicated to it in that 95. He'll run it as close to the edge, and sometimes he'll step over the edge and damage this 95 car and take himself out of contention by making the runs at the top of the racetrack, trying to get that outside wall together. As I think we had some issue with Corey Abbott, who was slow on the apron. You see to the right of your screen. Saw some tire smoke there in turn 2 that might have been the culprit.
I'm also noticing Ethan Stanley recently made a trip to pit road, and Mark Rebelos has parked it for the night, it looks like.
Rebelos might have had some damage from that first incident. Ethan Burrell has cleared the second. He is marching towards the race lead. And we might have had that issue. I think Ethan Stanley, that car has definitely gone away on the driver of the 91, in large part due to that damage from the contact with Nick and Delicato. And on top of that, couple that with the old tires, I think staying out might have pretty severely hurt in Ethan Stanley's chances of having a good race. But he needs to hope this thing goes green for a while and he can get kind of back on cycle with these race leaders.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was trying to scrub through the replay and find if I could find on my end any more information on the 91 or the 21, and it's not being very cooperative for me. So both of those cars disappearing at unfortunate times on my end. So I have no further information to provide. That's a long way to say I know nothing.
You know something. Scott Crump's out front of this race, and You definitely pointed out that those guys were dancing with danger there when it comes to the damage on these race cars, and just as some of those guys bounced it off the fence.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially I mean, and kind of the point I was making, you know, you bend even that right front tire a little bit. Short term, usually it makes the car tighter. It's definitely going to impact the handling one way or the other, usually in a way you don't like. And then also because it bends that angle of the tire, it usually makes the tire wear even worse. And you mentioned earlier, all right, the right front wears and makes the car tighter. So by the time you get to the end of the run, it's like triple. I mean, it's a double stuffed Oreo kind of tight or whatever, and you're just in really, really bad shape, screaming for help by the end of the run.
A double stuffed Oreo kind of tight.
It has more.
I get it.
I get it.
Mm-hmm. It's a humorous analogy to me, but I get it. I'm tracking.
Okay.
Very tight.
It more than your average amount of tight. I mean, the alternative isn't much better. I'm gonna leave that there.
Pushing.
Loose, all of them, any of them, none of them work.
I'm just getting word from management. They said move on.
The battle for the lead is heating up. Ethan Burrell on the hunt for some more laps led to go for that Elite Cup Series record here tonight. He's trying to track down Scott Crump. Crump got loose there coming off turn 2, but the way this 90 car has been running, it's pretty solid. He's led a lot of laps. He seems like he's got a lot of pace. As Ray Bracey just got loose off turn 4, just about wadded up 3 or 4 behind him. Up front here's Scott Crump on corner exit. You can see him turning back to the right. That tells me the car's a little loose on exit. Crump's trying to wear out the right rear of that car as Ethan Burrell makes a run to the inside. You can see him to the left.
Ooh. And you can see that fender creep into view. That was Ethan creeping up the hill and probably giving Scott a little bit less room for comfort than he would have liked there.
Scott runs the middle. Ethan drifting up off the bottom still. And Scott's got teammate Tyler Fody right there.
Man.
Ethan's got teammate Matthew Weeks behind. Ethan trying to make this pass, but he's struggling on that bottom. And like we mentioned, you want to run this outside if you can to try and make your passes, but it seems like Ethan couldn't get to the outside of Scott Crump. Now, maybe a little bit of contact.
And if you're Ethan, you were able to get Scott Crump back up the hill with that contact, but now what do you got to do with it? Right now, he's stuck beside Tyler Fody. He can't do anything with it.
Behind, man, it's tight right there too between Jonathan Cutlip and Justin Wadsworth. Tyler Fody clears by Ethan Burrell. He'll make a bid for the lead on the bottom under Scott Crump. And I think he's gonna encounter the same problems that Ethan Burrell did right there.
And there's not a lot of love lost amidst this top bunch here, especially that 11 car. He's got to try to do everything he can to get in front of these guys, and right now he's got to have the run down to backstretch to push Scott Crump out front. But can he make the inside work, or is he got to try to force the issue to the outside?
Got, the way this next gen car drives, you like to kind of force that dirty air onto a guy. You can also side draft and pull him back. Crump's going to need to do that right now. Weeks to the lead. Matthew Weeks leads the lap. He will get in front of Scott Crump and dump the dirty air onto the front bumper of this 90 car, but then Weeks drops to the bottom. That might give Scott Crump a run down the back straightaway here. Gable in the wall. Hibbs almost gets into him.
Weeks right back to the bottom. Crump follows him. A little bit surprising, but that, at least from Weeks' standpoint, he seems pretty content to run the bottom now that he's out front.
Yeah, Matthew Weeks has staved up the tires on this 11 car just right, and it looks like now Matthew Weeks is kind of going to set sail, I think. Crump's been running the top, and it seems like if you can keep that car on the bottom and make pace, like Matthew Weeks is right now, that's the fastest way around this Atlanta Motor Speedway.
And certainly the thing that's going to play in Matthew Weeks' favor now is we saw how much trouble both of those guys directly behind him. Jonathan Cutlip hasn't had a shot yet. We'll see what kind of pace he has shortly. But Ethan Burrell, Tyler Fode still having to fight to get around Scott Crump. This could be a chance for Weeks to open up that lead while second, third, and fourth all battle with each other.
And they are certainly battling as Weeks. I think Weeks is definitely pushing it. You see how close he got to that outside wall on corner exit of turn number 2. Crump still holding back Ethan Burrell, Tyler Fode, Jonathan Cutlip, and more. And that's ultimately creating a scenario where Matthew Weeks can kind of run his own race and open up a gap here.
Further back, David Tooker setting up a pass on Ryan Gable, who got very loose out of turn 4 this last time by, was almost in the grass, and that's what allowed David Tooker to get into position here. Can he complete the pass? They're still side by side down the backstretch.
Yep, still side by side. You can tell who's starting to struggle with the tires and who's been saving them over the course of this run. The guys who are struggling the most, though, are those guys who pitted, who didn't pit last time and had to come down pit road. Johnny Thomas, Ethan Stanley, Chad Frankenfield, Chris Wright, they're all hoping desperately for a caution flag at some point here to try and bottle things back up. At least Chris Wright is. I think Johnny and Ethan Stanley and Chad are hoping for it to cycle through and then the caution flag to hit.
And one thing I'm definitely keeping an eye on, we don't have to necessarily see his car on track, but at least looking at the data that's available to us, I wonder, now that we're getting further and further into this run, 67 laps, what is the tire life for Chris Wright? How long before we maybe see that meatball for tire wear? Will that happen before he has to pit for fuel? I'm keeping an eye on that. Haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, we'll see. I think if the tire wear were that severe, there's no way Chris would have made the decision earlier, but you never know. And I can't think we're too terribly far away from pit stops. You're Josh Adams in the 22 down pit road. This would be early for the guys who came down pit road around lap 30, I think. Oh. Speeding on pit road for Mr. Adams. He looked like he was coming in a bit hot.
I believe we have speeding on pit road for Mr. Adams. He smoked pit entry. When he got to the yellow cone, he was at 72 at least. Speed limit's 50. 50.
Yeah, 50, yeah.
You'll get a ticket on the highway for that one.
Yeah, definitely going to be frowned upon. Looks like I think he just decided to pit a little bit late, did Josh, with that right front damage, and you can see the tires were locked up, but to no avail in terms of slowing down for the pit road speed in time. He'll serve the penalty. Up front, Jonathan Cutlip still going after Ethan Burrell for that 4th spot.
And worth noting, you talk about serving the penalty. He's literally just now rolling out of his box because it was one of those 40-second stop and holds. I mean, that is a massive penalty under green flag condition.
Yeah, a little bit, one of those cases where speeding on pit road typically results in a pass-through in real NASCAR, and it's probably about 10 seconds lighter than a 40-second hold. You probably lose 30 seconds or so for driving through pit road. The 40-second stop and sit, though, I mean, just that's miserable too, right? Like, you're just sitting there watching the car stream on by, losing time. Here comes Chris Wright finally.
Chris Wright bringing his car to pit road safely under the speed limit. I can confirm no meatball. He did not blow out any tires or anything like that. Imagine it was pretty close to empty on fuel, 72 laps being, that'd probably be close to 100 miles or so.
What really stinks for Chris Wright is he's going to have to pit again. He can't go to the end from here either. There's no right. Advantage to be gained for Chris Wright. It's just from here, he has got to hope that this field cycles through, everybody pits, and the caution comes out. That's the only way that he can, gain some time back.
Right. I mean, obviously, right now he's got to go back out. He's got to have the freshest tires on the field. He's got to make up a lot of ground per lap. As there you see, Ray Bracey will also come to pit road in the number 7 machine.
I think the race leaders can stay out until they can make it on one more stop. They might even be able to stay out until they can make it to the end. The Braceys and Wrights and Johnny Thomas, Ethan Stanley, they're going to split this next stint up into 2 halves. As here comes Stanley through the middle, Crump trapped on the bottom. Fody got to second in all this mess. Stanley and Thomas are going to roll through on fresher tires. Burrell to 3rd, Cutlip to 4th. Crump's trapped on the bottom. He'll be back to 5th. And he's even going to lose 5th to Tate Lytle this time by, and it'll be Wadsworth hunting after his teammate for 6th.
And so now the question becomes, how much does Matthew Weeks have in the tank for these guys that have now cleared Scott Crump and will be trying to chase him down? As we watch this battle continue between Jonathan Cutlip and Ethan Burrell, that is for the 3rd position.
Give it to Jonathan Cutlip there coming off turn 2. Burrell starting to lose a little bit of ground here as well, just like Scott Crump. You know, I agree. I think it's going to be very interesting because I think Weeks will lose some time. A lot of this gap is in part to Fody battling with Crump and then this Stanley and Johnny Thomas running up on the leaders. As here comes Jesse Racimus. That's going to be a little bit quick. I think that might be a penalty on the 70 car.
I am surprisingly not seeing a black flag. I mean, even if he made speed, I thought he missed. Oh,
Oop.
Gerald Campbell has one.
Gerald definitely was a little fast on entry. Corey's been on pit road, but yeah, Gerald's going to serve one of them 40-second speeding holds. But that's what I was saying. Matthew Weeks is going to, I think, come back to the leaders a little bit. He's got a pretty big gap. He's currently getting passed by Ethan Stanley. That's dropped a 10th off of his lead. He's going to have to get passed by Johnny Thomas here as well. And Weeks is going to, go to the bottom that he's been running, give Johnny the top. But it is going to allow Fody to close just a little bit.
Overall, though, he's still, I mean, you mentioned maybe he lost a 10th that lap, but, when I made that comment just a couple of laps ago, the lead was 1.1. It's already 1.2, 1.3. So I think overall, Matthew Weeks still in really good shape with this set of tires.
Now, Matthew Weeks has done a pretty remarkable job during this stint. I mean, he's the pole sitter, dropped back early in the run and is pulled out to a pretty sizable gap as we're approaching pit stops. And it's just what you want to see, right? If you're one of these, a Pro Edge fan, you're looking to see Matthew Weeks rebound to form. He does not have a race win yet this season. He was seeded 9th of 9 playoff drivers for this second round. And, we've had a big 4 that kind of have won just about all of our races this season in Tyler Fody, Tate Lytle, Ethan Burrell, and Ethan Stanley. We're pacing towards one of those guys definitely not racing for a championship right now, especially with Weeks and Jonathan Cutlip up here in the top 3.
A little bit of a slide there for Justin Wadsworth on the exit of turn 4, but he keeps it pointed the right direction. We'll lose some ground here to David Tooker, and now Scott Crump alongside him is Zach Rogers closing back in. And Ryan Gable, one of those guys we talked about burning up his tires earlier, he's somehow drawn back into this pack.
Gable is doing it based on, I believe, the raciness of this pack. It's been a lot of slides, a lot of jostling as David Tooker clears by Crump for 6th. I want to point out that Tooker started 36th on the day and is currently running 6th. That's a very impressive climb for just the first half of this race. And if I'm not mistaken, we're coming to the halfway point right here.
That would check out mathematically.
I believe it'll be either this time or next time. Either way, I don't believe Matthew Weeks is going to have any competition in taking down that halfway point. No point in this round. Never mind. There you go. Now, he'll still lead halfway in the race. Let's shout out the guy there on the bottom at the top of your screen, Zach Rogers, who jumped into the top 10 here. If we can, while he's battling with those Blake Norman drivers, this is an impressive run for Zach Rogers. He's done a lot of these. He's hovered at the back end of the top 10, top 15 all season long, but he's shown some muscle today. He's been able to drive up here and get into the pack with the guy who led most of this stint in Scott Crump. Justin Wadsworth is in the playoffs. This is a strong run for Zach Rogers.
Definitely a strong run for Zach Rogers in that one car, currently in the top 10 as we get further and further into this green flag run. And you feel like he's probably got a little bit of pace on at least some of these cars in front of him, but right now there's just nowhere really for him to go. And especially now you've got Chad Frankenfield closing in on those fresh tires as well. He's got to be trying to march his way through.
Keep you right here, Dave. Chad Frankenfield rolling through on fresh tires around Scott Crump. Ultimately, Crump goes to the top. He almost gets the wall. And Ethan Burrell has to slide underneath, but Frankenfield will roll through. Now Rogers and Wadsworth bottled up still behind Crump and Burrell, who continue to battle, and Frankenfield rockets on by with the fresh tires. He's going to go try to get back in the lead lap.
And David Tooker, able to kind of keep pace here with Chad Frankenfield, even on those fresher tires. I'm sure over the next lap or two, that gap will grow, but pretty impressive at this point in the run to see David Tooker, even for a lap or two, keep up there.
Yep, he's another impressive guy moving forward. A couple of them, actually. Jordan Owens has moved into the top 10 as he goes by Ryan Gable and Jonathan Cutlip down pit road. Cut me off there. I was going to throw Nick Indelicato into the ring as well. He was stopped on the front stretch for our first caution. He is up to 11th. And that car is starting to move forward on this long green flag run.
Certainly Nick Indelicato was very fortunate in that instant that he was able to keep it off the wall and nobody collected him and able to still race, and he's making the most of it so far, working his way back into the top 10 in that number 10 machine.
Josh Adams, the current lap car, working this group of lead lap top 10 drivers, and Delicato might have gotten a piece of the fence there in the middle of the corner.
He got many pieces of the fence. He got a snack size package of the fence, I do believe. Now Ryan Gable is all over the place down the backstretch.
Gable's moved lanes, jumped to the top. Owens cut to the bottom to try and get underneath the 0-1. All this is Indelicato and Adams pull up on the side-by-side battle between Zach Rogers and Justin Wadsworth, and that's still behind the somewhat slower car of Ethan Burrell. It seems like Burrell has really struggled as here comes Adams.
That was 4 wide for Josh Adams. He made it work with that pace of the fresh tires, but boy, tight racing there.
Certainly a bold move, maybe a little more risk than reward for Josh Adams, who is one of the 3 drivers that's been slapped with a speeding penalty. Oh, Fortner sideways off of 4. He'll save it in the 26th. Lose some ground, but ultimately stay with this front pack. It was a mighty good save. It drops him into the clutches of Gavin Hibbs.
Seth Rawls calling out he's about to bring the number 25 to pit road.
He is 14th. He'll be the car behind Gavin Hibbs there. And here comes Mr. Rawls. We've seen guys speed already.
Okay, he got it woed down.
Yep,
he got it woed down.
Good job by Rawls.
I was worried with how far he sent it along turn 4, but once he made the turn, he got slowed up pretty quickly.
Did a good job. Where's Johnny Cutlip? That's I think the question. Cutlip came out. He's currently entering the pack that we were just on. So Owens, Gable, he just went around. Hibbs comes down pit road.
Ooh.
That might have been a little. I think he was probably okay.
He's fine. He's fine.
Matthew Weeks has pulled out a 3-second lead on Tyler Fode over the last 10 or so laps since we last talked about him. This 11 car seems to be on rails tonight.
And the best thing about that lead is it's going to give him the ability to kind of read what some of the guys behind him do and adjust accordingly.
Ooh.
There's no chance.
Ooh, 24 car black flag.
That was
Eating on pit road.
to the surprise of absolutely no one as we saw that pit entry live.
Yep. Jeff Green also on pit road. 2 car, no black flag. He is good to go. I want to note the progress of some of our guys who pitted super early. Johnny Thomas, Ethan Stanley are back on the lead lap back in the tail end of it. So if Chad Frankenfield hasn't arrived on scene with Matthew Weeks yet, but he is very close. But Johnny Thomas will shuffle to the race lead once pit stops cycle through. Now, the issue for Johnny and Ethan Stanley and Chad Frankenfield is going to be that the other guys are going to have fresher tires and potentially can go the rest of the way. Here's Jordan Owens down pit road. These guys are going to have to pit again. They're going to have to choose their moment to strike and hope that they can make up as much ground as possible. They've certainly made up a lot of time right now, but once everybody pits, they're going to have to probably wait 10, 15, maybe 20 laps and then come down again and try and maximize those tires and try and just minimize the damage with an extra pit stop in this race. And that's tough, but when you're playing the strategy game, that's sometimes the risk you're taking, and it's a good risk for a Johnny Thomas who's not in the playoff anymore, but for Ethan Stanley, this could be a pretty impactful strategy call for staying out that last time through, as he is right there behind Johnny Thomas on the back straightaway.
Yeah, certainly those guys will be hoping for a well-timed caution. You don't need it yet. It wouldn't be the worst.
They could get away with it now. They're on the lead lap.
They can get away with it now since they're on the lead lap. The best case would be after all these cars in front of them pit, because otherwise they're just got pit in front of you, and you're probably also going to pit under caution. But at least you'd be on the lead lap. Mm-hmm. The best case would be after all these guys pit and you cycle to the lead.
Right. Jonathan Cutlip just got back on the lead lap. He's the first of our main contingent that can probably go to the end on fuel from here. So he's back on the lead lap. Josh Adams has got to get back to 1 lap down, and then it'll be Chad Frankenfield and Ray Bracey clearing back onto the lead lap around Matthew Weeks as down pit road as Josh Clark, who I believe has some right front damage from that earlier pile up on the front straightaway. Ryan Gable is called putting in, but that's not good. David Tooker's down pit road and sideways.
Oh, man.
A lot of shenanigans happening here on this as pit stop started up, and the caution is out.
Oh, no.
I think Gable kept going and then spun out. Yeah. We're going to have to go way back on this one to see what happened there in turn 4, because Ryan Gable had some severe issues, and I think David Tooker had some issues. Chad Frankenfield had not unlapped himself. Neither had Ray Bracey and a couple others. I want to say Gable saw David Tooker spun on pit road and tried to abort pitting here, and then he might have just been out of shape. Rawls and Owens streak by, and when Gable tries to fire it up, that car goes out of control on him, and he winds up sliding it and spinning out.
Are we able to see? There's Ryan Gable going down pit road. I wasn't sure if we were able to see what happened with Tooker there.
Yeah, I think Tooker spun on pit road before Gable got there, and I'm wondering if Gable saw that and it maybe had some impact on him. You can see the guys that trapped a lap down: Bracey, Frankenfield. Frankenfield's going to get the lucky dog.
I don't think that would have done it. 'Cause,
Yeah.
he just locked up. It is until here, and probably, I mean, look, this is a very common issue for somebody like me, but for a guy like David Tooker, that's probably the earliest he's had a pit stall in about 30 years. He probably had no idea, wasn't even thinking about turning in that early for his pit stall.
I don't think David Tooker's 30 years old, but I think this point still tracks. Like he doesn't usually qualify back there, and let's take a look on board with Ryan Gable, what he saw entering pit road. He had called out pitting well before this, so it was well known, and he's on the binders. But yeah, I think this is just out of shape issue for Ryan Gable.
Yeah, looks like just for whatever reason he was not able to get that car back under control after missing pit road.
Yeah.
And to kind of illustrate to maybe anybody who's tuning in and is still relatively new, as to no surprise, Tally 01, to explain the pit stall bit there, the humor with David Tooker. In a NASCAR Cup Series race in the real world, you are given choice of pit stall based on usually qualifying results, and then you could pick whatever pit stall you want. Well, obviously, that would just be a horrific process to go through on iRacing if you actually had to pick a pit stall before every race. So for simplicity, it is, generally speaking, pole sitter has the very last stall, second place has the next stall, and so on forth. So if you qualify in the back of the field, you're one of those first stalls on pit road, which means you have a very early turn in a green flag situation such as this.
Aptly put. And Tooker had one of the very first pit stalls, and ultimately that confused him a touch. Let's see if Dave can get in our ad reads. I think we are coming to one to go here, so maybe just one ad read, and we'll see if we get another quick caution. Yes, let's do. I was going to say let's go ahead and do one ad read since we're already 1 to green, and then we'll see if another quick caution comes in for the rest of them.
Okay, sorry, you caught me with the second where I was itching my head, so bad. I came back and it was all quiet, and I was like, uh-oh, wonder if they said something. Premier sponsors, Blue Egg Marketing. Rev up your business with Blue Egg, your marketing pit crew. Turbocharge your lead generation with experienced drivers that can navigate the competitive track to connecting with your customers. With Blue Egg, you're always in the pole position, leading your brand toward victory lane. Don't spin your wheels, accelerate success with Blue Egg, fueling small businesses to win big. 40 Racewear, makers of the ultimate sim racing shoes and custom apparel designed for sim racing by sim racers. 40 sim racing shoes are custom engineered to connect racers to the pedals in a way no other racing shoe can, and still provide all the comfort needed for those double and triple stints. So visit 40racewear.com and check out the original racing gloves for you.
Perfect. Pace car is off. Matthew Weeks to the restart zone. He'll get on the loud pedal with his teammate there on the bottom as well. And Matthew Weeks will try and pull Tate Lytle through to a 1-2 for Pro Edge, just in front of a whole gaggle of Lake Norman Chevys. I want to note the way that all shook out. A ton of waiver rounds have been taken, and there's a bunch of different varying strategies in those waiver rounds. Some guys were on 30-lap old tires. Some guys are on 1-lap tires. And a lot of guys have gotten back on the lead lap now. It's a mess back in the back of the field. But up front, it is kind of the same as it's been. Matthew Weeks, Tate Lytle, Justin Wadsworth, and Tyler Fode battling for second. And then Nick Delicato working for that fourth spot in the 10. Almost got the wall coming out of turn 2.
There you see Nick Delicato able to clear his way into third. Zach Rogers ripping the fence to get up to the fourth spot.
little more aggression from some of these guys that haven't necessarily shown that aggression. Tate Lytle has fallen to 6th in a hurry, working the bottom. The rest of the guys running that outside line have just kind of jumped up there and freight trained, pushed those faster cars back. They know they'll probably get them in the long run, but there might not be a long run the way these guys are driving right now.
Well, I think you've got two concerns as far as that long run goes right now. The guys up front driving really hard trying to get that track position, and some of those guys you mentioned in the back that are on the wave around on the 30-lap old tires, they're probably hanging on for dear life, and Nick Indelicato might be right now.
Nick Indelicato with a bold move to jump up in front of Justin Wadsworth. I don't think Wadsworth appreciated it very much as he got into the 10 car. Now cutting to the bottom of the track under the 10 is Wadsworth, and behind him, Scott Crump going after Zach Rogers. Housekeeping note also, Ethan Stanley, Johnny Thomas, this caution was well timed for them. They're back up into the top 10.
Certainly great news for their playoff hopes at the moment, able to get back towards the front of this field. Oh, contact further back.
Between Carlos and I want to say Gerald Campbell. Could have been Chad. It was Chad.
That's Chad Frankenfield, yes.
Saw the Ford. Another near save for Chad Frankenfield, or near miss for Chad Frankenfield on the back straightaway. Brent Jones is the pink and yellow car up top, but he had no effect on this. It looked like Chad maybe got a little loose, and then contact with Carlos.
Yeah, I believe you're right. I believe he probably just got loose running the middle there, maybe panicked a little bit, trying to stay off of Brent Jones, who was giving as much room as he possibly could, probably even more room than he wanted to, running as close as he was to the fence, and ultimately, Chad making contact with the O2 of Carlos Acosta. Other than that, no further harm, but definitely a scary moment.
Second time that 15 car is engaged in a scary moment on the back straightaway in this race. Up front, old comer to the lead, Scott Crump, working to the outside of Matthew Weeks. We've seen him lead quite a few laps in this race. We've seen Weeks lead some laps, and Weeks drifts up the track off turn 4, almost got into Scott Crump, but the outside line will prevail once again. And the way Weeks' car has worked, if I'm Weeks, I'm perfectly content to give up this track position right now, because if this race goes green for even 10 more laps, that 11 car is going to come right back to life. Oh, contact. No. Nope, never mind. There it goes. Rucker into the inside wall. He had help.
No caution.
From Michael Goodman. Both of them are on the track trying to get back going. No caution. We will remain green. Up front, Weeks and Crump are still side by side. We'll take a look at what happened to Andrew Rucker.
Looks like it's just got to get loose on him.
Yep, same thing that happened to Chad Frankenfield just a little bit earlier. Loosens up. Rucker ends up sliding sideways against Michael Goodman, takes them both down to the inside wall. Contact made down there. But because that didn't occur on the racing surface, no caution thrown by iRacing.
And Michael Goodman did get a meatball with that contact to the inside wall, so tough break for Goody.
And race control Nick Massey unable to throw the caution flag there, but does tally Andrew Rucker, especially after the damage, does give Michael Goodman that meatball flag. Here's a name that the fans of some of these guys up front, like Scott Crump and Justin Wadsworth, Matthew Weeks, are probably not wanting me to say, is Ethan Stanley has driven up 6th. And he's won 5 times this season. It's Delicato working to the inside of Weeks. They're 3 wide for the lead right now. Weeks in that treacherous middle. He'll cut in front of Wadsworth and move up to the top. But the last name I want to see on my relative, if I'm one of these 5 guys that have not won a race this season fighting for this win, is the driver of that 91 car, because he has managed to find a way to win them any way all season long, and getting run into on lap 15 and getting off strategy and then getting the caution to put him back on strategy would just be another feather in the cap of a guy who's won every way you can win this season.
It certainly has. It's been the show of the Ethans all season long. We've talked about it. And sure enough, here we go down to the last 50 laps or so here at Atlanta, and there's that 91 car all over again.
And big wreck, Kyle Henshaw, Justin Fortner in it as well, Jordan Owens, Brent Jones, and Ryan Gable. Henshaw was the first one around in this one, and that's a shame for Jordan Owens. He had a pretty good run going, so too Brent Jones. Looks like there might be some, let's see. This is a spot where that car has gotten loose, that outside car. And yep. There it is. And it snaps loose on Henshaw right in front of Brent Jones. And Fortner's going to get damage. Owens is going to get damage. Oh,
yeah, I think at this point he doesn't even have control of the car, and that's where Ryan Gable's got to get collected a bit as well.
Playoff driver for Ryan Gable too. He might be okay.
Yeah.
I will note Chris Wright's not staying out this time. There he goes, driving by the wreck. He was still out there on old tires. That's the second caution Chris Wright's had to stay out in. Here's the onboard for Brent Jones. You'll be able to see just how little reaction time you have in a situation like that.
Absolutely none.
Poor Brent. Poor Jordan. Brent got sucked up in one of the wrecks last week and pretty much immediately taken out of the race at Talladega. And at least this week he got to run 115 laps before he was taken out.
Well, we've got this chance here. It might be the last chance we get, so probably a good chance for our last ad break here.
Yeah, let's go ahead and knock that out if possible.
All right, we'll be right back.
3 years of sellout crowds. 3 years of edge-of-your-seat action. 3 years of jaw-dropping finishes. Worldwide Technology Raceway has rocked the world of NASCAR. And now, NASCAR is giving us another reason to celebrate. The 2025 NASCAR Cup Series Championship Playoffs are coming. Sunday, September 7th, 2025. Just when you thought the racing couldn't get any more intense, now every single lap matters. One wrong move could be the difference between elimination and being crowned the king. The Enjoy Illinois 300, the Confluence Music Festival, the NASCAR Cup Series Playoffs, and for the first time in 15 years, the NASCAR Xfinity Series on Saturday, September 6th. Don't be on the outside looking in. See history being made in your own backyard. Go to www.raceway.com for the hottest ticket of the year.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Welcome back to Legacy Atlanta after our fourth caution flag of the evening. There's been a bit of a change at the front of the field. Ethan Burrell is now your race leader with Scott Crump back to second, Tyler Fode third, Matthew Weeks fourth, Zach Rogers is going to line up in 6th, but he's kind of 5th right now as the outside lane's pushed forward. Justin Wadsworth is alongside him, and then it'll be Nick Indelicato, Jonathan Cutlip, Tate Lytle, and David Tooker. That caution was a big benefit to a bunch of guys who needed to get back in the lead lap and who took the wave around last time, like Chris Wright, who's been fighting uphill battle since the first couple of cautions today. The green flag is out. Ethan Burrell on the loud pedal. Scott Crump got a pretty good jump from 2nd. He's able to maintain with Matthew Weeks, but that's pretty strong for the leader of this race. And Ethan Burrell taking over, and that preferred lane in these restarts, that outside line, Matthew Weeks up to 2nd.
Further back, you see the field fanning out, trying to get every drop of track position they can on this restart. But Ethan Burrell, he's got to jump way out front here.
One name that I did not mention in that top 10 rundown, Ethan Stanley. It appears he fixed the damage on that 91 car. It dropped him all the way back to 23rd on this restart. He's well back in the field now, so Ethan Stanley had gotten up to 5th, but he is took his damage. He's going to try and fight his way back up through the field again. They're spinning off turn 4. It was right at where Ethan Stanley is. They're still spinning. It's Andrew Rucker.
Yeah, I think it might have been.
They're going to wreck. There's a caution at the back straightaway.
I was
Rucker.
About to say, I think they collected some more cars here.
Michael Hosack, Gable again. One of our playoff drivers, Ryan Gable. But this happened even before this spot.
Right.
When Rucker got sideways.
Here.
There's Gable coming up the track. And
Jordan Owens is going to get a piece of that as well.
I'm sure Dave and I
go even further back if we can.
Yeah, this started up earlier even for Andrew Rucker. Oh, it's Carlos Acosta.
Yeah, Carlos got a piece of the wall, got into Fortner, who got into Rucker, who said he didn't know they were even 3 wide to start with, and that he didn't give Fortner a lot of room there because he was unaware of the presence of Carlos Acosta, who would have kind of backed up on them after getting into the wall. And then further back, as Rucker's trying to hang on to this, then you'll see Ryan Gable get out of shape. I think right here, he kind of makes a sudden move to the right, seeing Rucker, thinking he's got to just spin. Instead, Rucker kind of drives down the track, and Gable clips the nose of Michael Hosack. Or excuse me, that's Jordan Owens, and then he clips Michael Hosack.
Catches up Josh Clark in this as well. I don't think the damage is too severe on Ryan Gable's number 01. Good, he's going to find a way through this one, but it is another incident and for a guy that needs assistance.
Ryan Gable has a meatball.
Oh, well, never mind. Not good for one of our playoff drivers. They've been pretty strong in points all season long, but it's like Atlanta is going to be where the points side of this goes to die for Ryan Gable, and then he will have to win one of our next races, and I would say I wouldn't count him out at New Hampshire next week. He might be pretty good over there.
It will certainly be a de facto home race for him.
I do want to point out, as Gable, Northeast guy for sure. Gable was Dave's pick. Owens was my pick. Zach, how's your pick doing?
It hasn't been terrific for any of the picks, has it?
No, not particularly.
Johnny Thomas is currently 22nd. Who'd you say your pick was again, Dave?
Dave was Gable. Mine was Jordan Owens. They just both got sucked up into that wreck.
So hey, mine's looking the best so far. We are, as the kids say, cooking.
The best pick performance right now did not check his tires on the last pit stop and had to come back down for the second time. So
there is that.
Johnny was going to be in the top 10, like firmly in the top 10. He came down pit road 6th before our, during our 4th caution. But he made a mistake that I have made before, and that is it's easy because you think I'm going to take fuel only on my next stop. I'm going to uncheck my tires, and he came out pit road first, but that's not what you want here at Atlanta, as Chris Wright would be the first one to tell you. So as we line up, 1 to go, the Pro Edge Toyotas are on the front row. Burrell and Weeks will lead the way. Zach Rogers will restart 3rd here. Tyler Fode will restart 4th. Scott Crump 5th with Justin Wadsworth 6th. The 3 Lake Norman Chevrolets right there in behind Rogers. Then you're going to have Jonathan Cutlip making a recovery after pitting early and getting that caution flag. Then David Hooker, Nick Indelicato, and Trey Holmes into the top 10. Holmes was sideways on lap 14 or so. Brought out our first caution, and here he is back in contention for this one. And then it's Tate Lytle and Chad Frankenfield just outside the top 10 here. So a lot of action the rest of the way. 40 laps to go. The intensity's already come up a little bit. I think it's going to continue to rise. Pace car is off. Green flag back out. Ethan Burrell gets on the loud pedal. Zach Rogers caught sleeping just a little bit. That outside line gets to have a pretty big shove with Wadsworth, Fode, and Weeks all pushing towards the front of the field. Wadsworth to the middle. Crump drifts up to the top.
Ethan Burrell again able to stretch out a lead, while from second on back it is an absolute brawl. Matthew Weeks is able to get out front of that group at the moment.
Weeks in front of Fode, and that's a tandem that has raced really hard together. Weeks to the top, Fode to the bottom. They're battling for second, and just behind, snarling pack with Tate Lytle is 3 wide.
Tate Lytle was 3 wide with, I believe that was Trey Holmes and Nick Indelicato, and that's where they informed Gavin Hibbs getting a piece of the wall on the exit of 2, and Trey Holmes might be in the wall as well.
Gavin Hibbs getting a piece of the wall. Well, I never. Trey Holmes also yielding that spot to Tate Lytle. Tate having to finally show some muscle in this 56 car and really burn the tires. Tyler Fode cleared Matthew Weeks while we were looking back at that craziness. There's 2 cars on the apron. One of them's Ethan Stanley.
Ethan Stanley, you mentioned another car. It looks like Josh Adams, but neither of them going to bring out the caution, and that's got to be a huge blow for both of those guys.
Ethan Stanley especially, he had worked his way into the top 15 after fixing all that damage, and now he gets into Josh Adams, who got sideways, and just like that, Stanley all the way to the back of this pack, currently running 22nd, but that's even before this. He'll be back in like 26th.
Yeah, it's got to be a huge fall for Ethan Stanley here as he's back underway, but well off the pace. There you see 26th, his current scored position.
He'll be hoping for a yellow flag here before too long to try and get him back caught up to this front pack. Still snarling is this whole group. They're led by Ethan Burrell, but Tyler Fode in tow. Matthew Weeks clears off Zach Rogers, and then it's Justin Wadsworth and Jonathan Cutlip where our camera is now. And they're battling hard for the 6th position.
David Hooker trying to work his way alongside Jonathan Cutlip. Cutlip says no with the big move down the backstretch. Meanwhile, now David Hooker able to cut across to the inside. Can he make that stick as they go down the front stretch?
Hooker working the bottom, Cutlip working the top, Lytle just behind. He's trying to find a way through. Tate thinks he can go out and win this race. Up front, Matthew Weeks just lost the 3rd spot to Zach Rogers.
Zach Rogers has been on the move over these last few laps, and like you say, he's up to that 3rd position. They're stacking up a little bit here on our screen there. Tate Lytle backing up some to David Hooker and Nick Indelicato in a really big out-of-shape moment there.
Tate gets a little bit sideways. Here comes Holmes to the outside of Chad Frankenfield. They have really ramped up the intensity here with 33 laps to go now. Frankenfield loose coming out of turn 2 again for the third time in this race, and just in front or just behind him, Chris Wright finally making his entrance back towards the front of the field.
Chris Wright's got to dive to the inside of Chad Frankenfield and try to pick up that position as they make their way down the front stretch. That's a battle for the 14th position.
And it's all in behind Ethan Burrell right now. Burrell has stretched out the lead. Clean air king for Ethan Burrell. Tyler Fode trying to capitalize and move closer to that 37 car. Rogers being in front of Weeks, and now the 90 of Scott Crump has gotten in front of Matthew Weeks.
He has for now, but Weeks with the run down the front stretch, and he's got to try to take that spot back. And Jonathan Cutlip, oh, huge send there from Scott Crump into turn 1. That's got to send Matthew Weeks back to the inside.
Weeks trying to side draft the 90, get as much space as he can on Scott Crump on the bottom, try to reduce the pace of that 90 that's carrying the speed up top. But this battle between the 11 and the 90 has really closed the gap to these cars behind. Here comes Jonathan Cutlip to the outside of Matthew Weeks. Tate Lytle's now working to the outside of Matthew Weeks. Weeks just in a bad spot right now as here comes Lytle to the middle.
Yeah, all of these guys are trying to get out in front of this clump. You can see how they're stacking up behind Scott Crump and Matthew Weeks as they battle for this 4th position.
Yeah, Crump and Weeks definitely the culprit of the clumping here, and Wadsworth trying to find his way back forward, and Delicato trying to find his way forward. All these guys in the playoffs with the exception of the 90 of Scott Crump and obviously the 1 of Zach Rogers, who's half a second up the road. He's pulled away from these guys because he's not battling.
Yeah, for those top 3 guys, they're kind of able to focus on each other, running their marks, trying to figure out what they're going to do over these last 30 laps to battle for the win. Anybody behind that is kind of snarled in this little brawl just to get into the top 4.
Frankenfield, Wright, Campbell, Green, all still battling it out for, this is 13th or so.
Indeed, Frankenfield running in the 13th position at the moment.
He's holding off Campbell and Wright, who are side by side just behind. Ultimately, you think Chris Wright regrets going for his Holmes in the wall, but you think Chris Wright regrets not pitting there early in the race and ultimately sacrificing that track position? He has not been able to move back towards the front in the slightest.
This is about as good as it's gotten, and certainly he's...
Jesse.
Who was that further back? Was that Jesse? Yeah, okay.
Jesse. An incredible save for Jesse Racimus. He only lost like 2 spots.
Here we go. This battle again for 4th. Weeks and Crump.
Stop me if you've heard us before, but Weeks does finally clear by Scott Crump. And this is the point in the run where that 11 car starts to come to life and has just about every green flag run we've had. About that 15 to 20 lap mark, the 11 car just really starts to eat, and Weeks is going to have to eat pretty good here, because this is a great opportunity for him to go win a race, lock into that final race, and kick out one of these 4 guys that's been dominating. Right now, the biggest loser among those 4 guys is Ethan Stanley. He's had a pretty bad race, kind of a disaster of a night. A Matthew Weeks win would put Ethan Stanley in real jeopardy of being the series wins leader and not having a chance to make it to the final race.
And if you're looking at the scoring pylon on the left-hand side, Matthew Weeks already eating into that gap towards Ethan Burrell. Now, of course, the trick to that, it's one thing to catch these 3 cars in front of him. It's going to be another thing entirely to pass them, especially if Scott Crump is able to keep in touch and even frustrate Matthew Weeks in that attempt. By the way, Tyler Fode closing in on Ethan Burrell for the lead.
Yeah, I was going to say, what could be Matthew Weeks' best friend is maybe his most mortal enemy right here. It's Tyler Fode. If Tyler Fode can get side by side with Ethan Burrell here at any point, that's going to bring the 1 and the 11 right back into this fight.
100%, and certainly Tyler Fode has closed back in. We mentioned the gap Ethan Burrell had opened up after that restart, but now it is shaping up to be a fight for the win between these two playoff competitors.
And both of these guys would love to punch their ticket to that final race and race for a championship. Fode with just one Elite Cup Series championship. Burrell has yet to win one, which is a fact that will always shock me, because this is one of the most talented drivers in this series, and he's going to run that high side, going to try and hold off Tyler Fode up there, but Zach Rogers and Matthew Weeks are starting to really eat into the lead right here. It seems like the tires are going away a little bit on the 37 car. Oh, Seth Rawls in the wall behind. They all stream to the bottom to get around the 25 car. Up front, battle for the lead. Here comes Fode.
Side by side, 22 laps to go for the leaders. The battle up front is,
Oh.
oh boy, that was close. Tyler Fode really chucked it into turn 1. I don't think Ethan Burrell's going to be able to get that run off the corner. He might have even had to lift a little bit there for Tyler Fode.
That maximized the loss, right? Or minimized the loss for Tyler Fode. They did not spend 2, 3, 4 laps running side by side. Fode was able to dispatch Ethan Burrell in one corner, get into the clean air. That might be all it takes for Tyler Fode right now. Matthew Weeks is still 0.6 of a second back, and with Fode getting to the clean air, Burrell, providing dirty air for those guys behind, that might be all Tyler Fode needs. Burrell sideways off turn 2.
I don't know about that. Weeks still gaining nearly 0.1 of a second per lap. He is there. This is a 4-car battle for the lead coming to 20 to go.
And we know how difficult that 40 car is to pass. Matthew Weeks and Zach Rogers, for that matter, definitely up to the task here. What can they do with the 40 car, who's won 2 of our last 4 races? And he's really starting to come on strong as these playoffs wind down. Ethan Burrell's not out of this thing yet either, though. The way the tires seem to be trending on this 37 car, it seems like he may be struggling, but he's kept Tyler Fode right there. He has not allowed the 40 car to pull away. So here comes Weeks to the bottom of it, Zach Rogers.
Weeks to the bottom, and he might be able to clear Zach Rogers going into turn 1. The only catch is, where is he going to be able to put that car with Ethan Burrell also on the outside lane? But right now, oh, look at the run Matthew Weeks gets running the inside line. He will clear Zach Rogers. He might clear Ethan Burrell. Matthew Weeks is in second. What a power run through 1 and 2 that time.
Tyler Fode's got to go to the bottom. Matthew Weeks to the inside for the race lead. He made up a 0.6 of a second in 1 lap. Battle is for the lead. Weeks at the line will have it. Fode's going to have to battle on the outside like we've seen him do, but look at the run this 11 car gets through 1 and 2.
Oh, that is disgusting. That car is hooked up on the bottom right now. We talked about how hard it is for guys to pass on the bottom. It has not been for Matthew Weeks when that car hits its stride 30 laps or so into a run. We are there now, and I don't know if anybody's got anything for him now.
Yeah, maybe Jonathan Cutlip is about the only guy remaining. Tyler Fode had nothing. Burrell had nothing. Rogers, nothing for that 11 car, and it's already 0.3 of a second. Fode never got that with his clean air. Burrell had it right off the restart. It's up to Jonathan Cutlip right now to go up there and try and challenge for a win, because Matthew Weeks is driving away.
Well, one car I'm going to keep an eye on that's starting to make some headway is that 56 of Tate Lytle. Right now he's trying to get around Scott Crump, but he's starting to creep into the picture as well, and I say that now he's under a lot of pressure from Justin Wadsworth.
Yeah, Tate has not had quite the same level of pace that Matthew Weeks has at that point in the run. Back when Matthew Weeks took the race lead, he and Tate Lytle were kind of running together. Tate moved to third, but Weeks pulled 4 seconds on him. Here comes Cutlip underneath Burrell. That's a battle for third, and I'm pretty sure this. Oh no, I guess it was Tate Lytle last week, but Cutlip and Weeks were both interviewed by us last week. So, two guys still in the top three that have been there. Jonathan Cutlip trying to get back into the Final Four. Tyler Fode trying to get back in and go for his second championship. It'd be Cutlip's first. It'd be Burrell's first. Matthew Weeks, he's won, I believe, 2 championships at this level in the Elite Belly Up Sports Cup Series.
The biggest enemy right now for anybody behind Tyler Fode is time. I mean, Jonathan Cutlip may have the pace, but already he's a second back, and that's before he finds a way around Tyler Fode. Same for any of these guys further back, whether it be Lytle, Wadsworth, whatever the case may be. We're down to 14 laps to go, and the longer it takes you to get out in front of this group, the less time you're going to have to chase down Matthew Weeks, if you've even got the pace to do so.
Here comes Jonathan Cutlip to the inside of Tyler Fode for that second spot, but just look at how much more difficult it is for Jonathan Cutlip to bypass the 40 car on the bottom of the track than it was for Matthew Weeks.
Yeah, I mean, that's about a 1/10.5 right there.
Yeah. Cutlip tried to set up that pass in turn 3 too. He went to the top in 1 and 2, went higher than Tyler Fode, and then drove down the back straightaway with the big run, jumped to the bottom, and was completely unable to do anything. Completely stalled out as soon as he got there. We're a caution flag away from understanding who's going to win this race right now. I mean, Matthew Weeks' car is just so much better than anybody back here after this, 20-ish laps point in the run.
Just a truly impressive drive so far. Don't want to write the check just yet, but no matter what the outcome is, there's no doubt on the long run, this 11 car has been the car to beat.
Yep. Looks a lot like, Cutlip and Fode are making contact in turn 3. That first second. That contact has opened up the gap to well over a 1.5 seconds now up to Matthew Weeks. And these guys are battling it out for that second spot on the podium and not much else. Also a heavy battle just behind. Lytle, Rogers, Wadsworth, Crump, Burrell all scrapping for 4th on back.
It's crazy to think as they stand right now. I mean, Matthew Weeks still looking for that first win this season. The last time he won here in the Belly Up Sports Cup Series, last season at Richmond, June the 5th.
Wow. I would not have expected that. I mean, you knew he was struggling a little bit this season, but 3 wide for 5th, side by side for 2nd. The battles are not over. These guys are still racing hard. Cutlip trying to get by Fode. He tries to drift up the track, but Fode's still there on the outside. First, 5th. Lytle clears by Rogers. Wadsworth clears by Rogers, and it'll be Justin Wadsworth working ahead of Tate Lytle down the front straightaway. Cutlip to 2nd. He clears by Tyler Fode.
Indeed, he's cleared by Tyler Fode. Now he's basically 2 seconds back and honestly still losing ground. He would have to make up, 2/10 a lap just to get back to Matthew Weeks before this thing's over?
Yeah, that's not what you want to see. This battle is for 5th. Justin Wadsworth, Tate Lytle still side by side. Wadsworth holds off Tate Lytle for now. Let's check him at the line. Yeah, he lost 2/10 that lap to Jonathan Cutlip. That won't get it done for the battle for the win. Tate Lytle's battling Scott Crump, though. That's for 6th. Those guys still scrapping hard, trying to maximize points. Wadsworth got into the top 5, though, around Tate Lytle, and he's tracking after Ethan Burrell for 4th. I think that Wadsworth could be a sneaky podium contender here with just 7 laps to go, though if he gets side by side with Ethan Burrell, that might allow Tyler Fode enough space to hold on to 3rd.
And that's the kind of night you need to get back, on the right side of that playoff battle. Obviously, a win would be crucial, but at least one driver's going to make it in on points, and that's the kind of run you need if you want to be that driver is a little further. Oh, no! Chris Wright is around on the backstretch. That's going to bring up caution.
That is Dave was on it, man. You knew exactly the feeling hit, and that's why I said before, Matthew Weeks was a caution away. The caution has flown, and now what do you do if you're Matthew Weeks? This changes everything. Looks like Chris got just a little bit loose. I think he had it gathered up. We'll see. We'll see what Nick Massey, the race control, puts here. I'm guessing it'll be a racing deal because Chris did get loose and maybe lose a little bit of momentum, but at that point, Chad can also probably not turn down the track and run into Chris, right? So, Scott Crump has stayed out.
And not many took his lead on that.
I can't imagine it's going to work quite well for Scott Crump. Ryan Gable stayed out. He's not on the lead lap, I don't think.
Johnny Thomas.
Yeah, he's 12 laps down. And Johnny stayed out. A bunch of guys had pretty quick pit stops. Wadsworth, Fody. That tells me 2 tires. Cutlip got out ahead of Fody. I think Weeks got out ahead of Cutlip. So they kind of stayed exactly the same order there. But if a couple of guys have stayed out, that's going to change the calculus. At the front of the field, Matthew Weeks is going to have to run qualifying laps like he ran to win the pole in order to go out and get this win. We have not seen this 11 car be very good on the restart at all.
You have to, and the part that's going to be really tricky for all of these guys is if you had to put your faith in a couple of guys to restart in front of the entire field on old tires, you could do a lot worse than Scott Crump and Johnny Thomas. But this has notoriously been a very tricky place over the years to restart on old tires.
Yeah, you can get tire spin that might stack up your line, and we do not have a choose cone or anything. I mean, the race can be very well decided by which of these two guys, if either, get to the gas, right? It looks like Matthew Weeks is going to restart third. He'll be on the bottom behind, and then does Scott Crump take the bottom or the top? I think typically at Atlanta, the bottom restarts a little bit better. Crump might feel like he can keep up momentum better on the top and restart up top. So, an unenviable position for those guys who came down pit road to come out and see a couple of guys having stayed out on the track in front of them. All of this caution and such, Ethan Stanley has moved to 15th, and for a day that was looking disastrous for the driver of the 91 who's won 5 races this season, especially with Matthew Weeks tracking towards the win and to knock one of the dominant drivers of the season out of the Final Four, all of a sudden he's in a spot where he could potentially pick up a couple of spots, get a top 10, and maintain a really strong, a really firm stranglehold on the points. And then we obviously could potentially see any one of the top 10 drivers win this race and change up who's going to be locking themselves into that final race in a few weeks' time.
Oh, that caution could have seismic impacts on really the outcome of this entire season.
It sure could. Did Nick give us a who was received the tally for that one, Dave?
He just said over race chat that it was a racing incident between Chris and Chad.
That was gonna be my summation.
Nothing egregious was his word.
Okay, yeah. I felt like, yes, Chad could have given a little more room, but Chris also got loose started. So, equal finger points and maybe a season-altering caution. We'll see what Matthew Weeks thinks about that potentially later on. 3 laps to go. Natural green-white checkered here. We won't break into those unless we do not get around and get to the white flag. Pace car is off. Scott Crump, Johnny Thomas on the front row with old tires. Green flag. Crump gets to the loud pedal. Johnny spins him a little bit. Here comes Weeks to the bottom.
Oh, Weeks has got to take it 3 wide. Crump's got to try and cover.
He has to.
Can't. Oh, Weeks has got to be clear here. They're 3 wide behind him. Scott Crump.
Oh, Crump into the wall. They're all going to get by Scott Crump. It did not work out for Crump. Johnny's still up in third. It's Weeks, then Cutlip down into turn 3. Johnny Cutlip's going to have an opportunity to go after Matthew Weeks for this one.
Weeks and Cutlip, 2 playoff guys coming to the Whiplash Sim Flags white flag.
Johnny Thomas in third. Burrell and Fody working for fourth. Jonathan Cutlip's going to have one more chance to get after Matthew Weeks. Weeks to the top of the track here in the back straightaway. 3 wide, 4 wide, wrecking. Ethan Burrell's around. He's going to collect someone. They're all wrecking on the back straightaway. It's Weeks and Cutlip going for the checkered flag. Fody made it to third. Tate Lytle's going to be fifth. Cutlip to the inside of Weeks. They're going to be side by side. No. Weeks cuts off Cutlip. Matthew Weeks will win at Atlanta and lock himself into the championship race. Whew. That was we're going to need to go take a look at the big wreck there on the back straightaway because Burrell still hasn't finished. Ethan Stanley was involved in this wreck. I did not see. I think Nick and Delicato is the car Ethan Burrell is going to pin into the wall here. And did Ethan Stanley cause this?
No, it starts ahead of this. I mean, there may be separate incidents here, but there's another incident in front of this right here that I think starts with Tate Lytle getting into John. Is that Johnny Thomas?
Yep. Tate got Johnny down and into Ethan Burrell.
So a separate incident from the one you were seeing, but yes.
Mm-hmm. So you have Ethan spinning Zach Rogers. You have Tate spinning Johnny Thomas.
And then the field just scrambles trying to get by, but some of these cars are already out of shape. And as you mentioned, several playoff contenders getting collected. You see Ethan Stanley.
And Delicato.
Look at Chad Frickefield almost flipping there on the backstretch.
Rucker just piles into it. Acosta piles into it. Burrell got hit again. Wow. Final results have Ethan Burrell tallied at 22nd. Nick and Delicato 14th. Ethan Stanley 18th. And yeah, tallies for the 56 and 91. And I would concur with that final ruling. And I don't believe that impacts their standing in this race. They will finish 5th and 18th respectively, but made for a wild finish right there. I am very interested to get Matthew Weeks' reaction here because that he had that one almost taken from him, and then he made a great move to get back to it and win this race. And take a quick look at the standings while Tyler Fody gets into the waiting room for us. Weeks, Cutlip, Fody, the top 3, all playoff drivers, very important. From that aspect, David Hooker rallies to finish 4th with Tate Lytle rounding out the top 5. Good results for the 56. Despite the last lap collision, Josh Adams and Seth Rawls pick up strong top 10 finishes. Justin Wadsworth with a good points run for his playoff hopes. Jeff Green and Chris Wright ends up with a top 10 finish at Atlanta. I'm telling you, that guy just knows how to get around here. And even though it might be knowing how to dodge the wrecks, Dusty Dewar, Gerald Campbell, Jesse Racimus, then Nick and Delicato and Johnny Thomas round out your top 15. Crump gets 16th. He and Thomas end up, I think, probably regretting that late pit call. And then we'll cycle through the rest of the race results the rest of the way. Big one there. Ethan Burrell finishing 22nd. Ryan Gable well back 31st. So both of those guys are going to be looking uphill for the points the next couple of weeks in the playoffs. Let's talk to Tyler Fody and see what he thought of this race tonight. Tyler, you took the lead there late, but it seemed like there wasn't a whole lot you could do. Take me through your night tonight and what another really solid points night does for the 40 car moving forward.
Yeah, I'll definitely take the third place. I spun it in qualifying, which was awesome. So I had to start way back there. But yeah, the race really didn't start till that second half. Felt really good on the long run. Weeks was just a lot better no matter what I did. Just talking with him here a second ago, he was able to make the bottom just work. I know everyone kind of tried it on and off there, but just consistently, he was the only one that was able to get it to work there. So props to him. But I felt good on that long run. And then the second half, that last, I think it was like right around lap 100, we got the yellow. And I was just going to try and do the opposite of my first run there and just take it really easy. Save the tires first 20 laps and go the last 40. And dropped all the way to like 15th. And then, of course, we got a yellow like 10 laps in. So totally screwed myself there, which led to the 2-tire call, which Burrell was in a similar situation there. Just had to get track position back. So, yeah, I did the 2 tires. It felt good. It was fun running up there, but I always knew we only had about 20 laps of those, and then it was going backwards. So even still, though, if we didn't get that late yellow, I think I was going to be third anyway. It was kind of leveling off. John had just got by me, but yeah. And then that last restart was a little wild. I was surprised Burrell wanted to cover the bottom so much going into one on the white flag, so I just took it to the wall and saw Johnny slow there with no tires. I do got to give Johnny a lot of props, though. He didn't have to lift. He could have definitely just slid up in front of me, but he kind of lifted through the middle there and gave me that lane to run around the top, and I guess that's kind of what started the wreck with Tate getting into the back of him. But yeah, no, I felt good for the most part, and I'll take the third place.
Overall, I mean, not a terrible week for Tyler Fody and the Fody family. Third place tonight. Frank picking up the dub Monday. Everything's good so far, right?
Yeah. So far, Dad had a rough night in the ARCA series, but yeah, no, it's can't complain about third. So and we got decent points. I think some of the standings are going to get shaken up here a little bit going into next week. So we'll see.
Tyler, now that we finished this one, 2 more races to go. Do you think when we go to Richmond that Matthew Weeks is going to be there? Does that change your game plan at all? Knowing you're going to have to fight him for the championship, or are you business as usual?
No, it doesn't. It never really matters who the other guys are. You just need to go to that race attempting to win. Not really anything else about that. So no, it doesn't really change much. Definitely is going to shake it up a little bit because I believe he was like 8th or 9th coming into this thing. So it could get pretty interesting these last couple races. I don't know the tracks, but definitely going to be exciting.
And before we let you go, Tyler, let's get those shout outs and thank yous on the podium finish tonight.
Yeah, the Lake Norman guys. God, we had that last wreck or so kind of jumbled us all up, but Justin had a solid night. Looks like he finished 8th. Everyone else had the speed, just the strategy. There was a lot of different strategies going on, so on the back end of some of those. But shout out to all those guys. We'll be making a push here the next couple weeks, see if we can get a couple more locked in here. But yeah, those guys, Cut Lip for painting the schemes, JD Designs, love the stuff that he does. So props to him, and shout out to you guys here for putting on the broadcast.
Thanks, Tyler. We appreciate it. Congrats on the 3rd place, and we'll see you next week.
Appreciate it.
Oh, 2 weeks. Have a good Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you guys. Yeah.
We are off next week. Zach, I'll let you ask John the first question here, so I give him the shout outs, if that's all right with you.
Sure. So now we'll talk with Jonathan Cutlip, runner-up finish here tonight. And Jonathan, I think the first question's a pretty simple one. It looked like you had ultimately the finish is about the same, but that last caution coming out, did you think it gave you a shot to maybe grab that win here tonight?
Yes and no. It was kind of just like a double-edged thing, just because we had some people staying out on old tires, so you kind of just have to factor that in and just hopefully you're on the right side of it and in the lane that people go in. And unfortunately, it just didn't really work out.
John, you worked your way up to second there on that last run before the late caution. And that's kind of what you were looking to finish anyway. Was there anything you could have done differently regarding the speed of that 11 car, or was he just kind of in a class of his own tonight?
Yes and no. It's just two different races. We were getting hosed with track position all night. It was kind of just rough trying to recover from that. Car was pretty tight, so that just compounds, and I was getting pretty frustrated personally. I'm not close to a fan of understeering cars, and it's just trying to pass people, especially with just a top dominant track, is just super frustrating.
Looking unofficially at Sim Racer Hub with the results from tonight put in, it looks like you're, I believe, 7 points out as it stands after this race going into New Hampshire and Kentucky in these next two races. Do you feel like those are two tracks you might be able to point your way into this, or do you think you have to go out and win one of these next two races?
To be honest, I don't really look at points all that much. I kind of just end up here. New Hampshire and Kentucky?
Yes.
That's two solid tracks for me. I enjoy racing New Hampshire, and I'm pretty sure I said it last week where it kind of depends on how the races go as far as just a field cleanliness thing, but I'm hoping that that's a good race for us. Kentucky, it's normally pretty solid. I can't remember the last time that I raced there outside of open, so it's going to be a curveball to see how that goes. Yeah, I think we can point in, but as far as getting a win, kind of just depends on a lot of other factors. It's pretty much out of my control at that point.
John, anyone to thank and shout out before we send you off tonight?
Thanks to Fuel Up Racing, Trey, Justin, Casey. Unfortunately, they were in the thick of it and we're having a rough night. Shout out to Personette. He's getting married soon. He couldn't race tonight because he's getting ready for that. But Josh, if you're watching, we're happy for you, dude. Race CPI, great group of guys to work with if you're looking to take your games to the next step. They run a lot of open stuff and just driver coaching. It's great to be a part of. But yeah, thanks to you guys for putting this together. Dave, D West, Zach. It's cool to be able to come up here and talk to you guys and even commentate a couple races here and there. But yeah, thank you guys.
All right, John. Well, congratulations on the P2. Hopefully we see you here with a win at some point. We've talked to you a lot this season, but it hadn't been with the trophy. So hopefully one of those is coming for you.
Yeah, we're getting close. So hopefully sooner rather than later.
We agree. Thanks, John. Have a good night.
Good night.
I put him back in here.
Good
Grab
job.
Matthew Weeks too. And send Cutlip pecking. All right. Matthew, congratulations on your first win of the season, man. It's been a bit of a long time coming, but from the pole and from the outset, it seemed like you just were the class of the field tonight. And once we got to 15 or 20 laps on the tires, the 11 car just took off, man. What were you doing that none of these other guys could figure out?
I was, that old Harvick line, wrapping that white line, dude, and watched him, in real life for years doing it, and I've gotten so used to running it here, and once we got that first little run we had, and I'm like noticing everyone running the middle, and I'm like, I am not moving off this bottom, so I just stuck to it. And I mean, even the practice we had last night, the lead practice, I just wrapped the bottom. The only time I touched outside was to qualify. That was it. So my main goal was just to wrap the bottom, and you know me for as long, man. When we get on these long runs, I think that's where my strong suit is, and we just like once 15 laps hit, it was like the car just flipped the switch and it was just ready to go.
You talk about that switch, you talk about that long run, and then lo and behold, the wreck late that sets up the green-white checkered finish. What was going through your mind when that yellow came out late?
I was mad. I'm not gonna lie. I cussed a little bit, but I was just after sitting there thinking, I was like, man, can my luck get any worse racing? It's like I finally the last couple weeks in Cup racing, back-to-back third place finishes, and I'm like, I'm finally getting. Had a rough one Monday with the late wreck, and it's like, no matter what, there's just bad luck there because I felt like I could have had a chance to win Kansas and got caught with lap cars and Dega just it was got past it, took the wrong move at the wrong time and led, and then I should have blocked early. So we was there, and then I don't know. I just felt good. I just felt so confident coming tonight, and I think that was a big goal. And then I bounced the question off Ethan. Maybe I should take two because he took two, and he's like, "Yeah, everyone's taking two," and I'm like, "I gotta stay up here." And I didn't think Crump and Johnny were going to stay out, and so we come out with two, and I'm just like, I'm just going to drive as hard as I possibly can. I deafened my Discord, and it was just full concentration, and we got the dub, man. I'm so hyped. It's been a rough season.
Yeah, it has. And, thinking about the rough season in this format, you are now locked into racing for a championship at Richmond. So I'll just gloss over the next two races. Looking ahead to Richmond, what are your thoughts about that being the final race and that being the place you're out chasing your third Elite Cup Series championship?
I'm excited because the last couple seasons I felt like I've been really good there, and I mean, dang, I won there last season. I was catching Chase late, and then we had a late caution, and I stayed out one. I felt like I could have won if it went green. It's like I feel really confident there, and it's during the day, so it's going to be slick, and that's my favorite part. And when it's hot and slick, so we're going to put some time in. I'm not even going to worry about the other tracks. It's just going to be Richmond here on out, and I'm going to be ready to come out swinging because I know the other guys that are going to show up there are going to be some hot rods because I've raced them for years now, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's the same, possibly Final Four from last season if they get dubs. And Stanley's been quick this year too, so no matter what, I'm going to have to go 150% until we get there and 200% during the race. It's time to go back to back. I want to be like Tate and go back to back and tie him a chip. In championship. So we're gonna put the effort in here.
And before we let you go, Matthew, let's hear everybody you have to thank on this win tonight that's punched your ticket into the championship.
Shout out you guys in the booth. You guys do an amazing job, and I can't wait to go back and watch this. And I ain't gonna lie, go back and watch old races from the past 2 seasons with y'all and stuff. So I enjoy what y'all do. Chad for the league, 213simware.com. Hit them up. I got my t-shirts on there, championship t-shirt from last season, flags, you name it. Other drivers are on there. JV Designs, my buddy Justin Vandermeer paint this beautiful new scheme, and it feels so good to finally put it in victory lane. Betty over there watching at Ethan's house, hope you enjoyed that. We put on a show, and all the Pro Edge guys, unlucky last lap for Ethan. I just seen it, so it sucks for him, and all the fueled up guys. And shout out to John finishing P2. He had a strong run too. Everyone that watched. If I had any family watching tonight, shout out to you guys. I know y'all really don't watch it, but if you did, thank you. And yeah, man, there's just so many people in this process. So everyone, love you guys. Thanks for the support, and let's go get it number 3.
That's right. Well, congratulations on the win, Matthew. I can't believe it's your first of the year, and Zach says it's your first win since June. Ironically, what Zach said, it was at Richmond. So, that bodes well going forward. But have a good night, Matthew. Enjoy your Thanksgiving, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
All right, man. Thank you. You guys have a good Thanksgiving, and we'll see you in a couple weeks, and maybe try to snag another one.
That's right. Have a good night, Matthew.
Y'all do the same.
So with that, interviews done. Round 1 of the playoffs done. We are heading to the Thanksgiving break. Zach, any final thoughts from tonight?
Well, you kind of stole my thunder a little bit. I was going to touch on, we went nearly an entire season without Matthew Weeks winning a race. and yet here it is. That win had taken place at Richmond. Now his ticket is punched to race for a championship, that third championship, that second championship in a row at Richmond. So, and he talked about it. He's got to be able to focus on that through Thanksgiving break and through those next 2 weeks while these other guys are trying to join him in that championship fight. That's a huge advantage for the driver of that 11 car.
It sure is, yeah. And I think there's a reason we've seen guys like Joey Logano in real life take that first race of this final round before the final race and use that to parlay into a championship. So certainly something to watch. We'll touch on it, I'm sure, next week or in 2 weeks rather. And everybody enjoy your week off. And we'll see you again from New Hampshire in 2 weeks. Good night, everybody. Have a happy Thanksgiving.